Hey there, here we are in the kitchen at First Baptist Church. Hey, back in October and November, I had COVID, and I remember eating some breakfast Mindy had cooked, had some sausage. It was really good, and I never really lost all my taste and smell, but I think it affected it a little bit. I remember noticing one day and asking Mindy, "Does this sausage seem more salty than usual to you?" And didn't seem that way to her, so I guess it was, the COVID. Just kind of interesting. But just thinking about salt today, you'll see some behind me on the shelves here in the kitchen. Salt's something we don't think about, but we use it all the time. We use it in our food. It's used to preserve food. The farm where my grandparents grew up on, salt was used for preserving ham, preserving the herring, fish that my granddad Bunch and family would catch in the nearby river. And salt used a lot of things like that. We don't even think about it. In the wintertime, we think about, well, you salt the sidewalks, you salt the roads, that kind of thing. We use salt around this area of the country, to soften our hard water. So I was looking up about salt and thinking about it. Do you know that, at least in this country, only 6% of the salt is used in food? 12% is for water conditioning, and about 8% for de-icing, about 6% in agriculture. The remaining 68%, actually this is a worldwide number, is used for manufacturing and other industrial processes. Some interesting things. It's used in the manufacture of plastics, paper pulp, and some other things. Salt is used as a flux in the production of aluminum. I didn't know, but salt is used to make soap and glycerin, and even used to make synthetic rubber, and on and on. There's lots of things you can use it for. Well, you may recall that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, "You are the salt of the earth." If the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men, thrown out like foot in the path. So I got to thinking, maybe you've had the same question. How does salt lose its saltiness? It's always salty to us, right? Well, John MacArthur mentions that in the Dead Sea area, if you got your salt from the Dead Sea, sometimes it would have gypsum contamination in it, and it would be worthless. It would be tasteless. So maybe Jesus was referring to that kind of corruption, that kind of contamination of something else that causes the salt to not be effective in seasoning in foods. So then you might as well just throw it out. We are called to be followers of God. And if you look at that verse, Matthew 5:13, and the verses that are after it, Jesus is calling us to influence the world. We are to be salt that influences the world, flavors the world towards God, to do good and to turn to God. Jesus says in that passage, if you look at the following verses, we are the light of the world. Now we know that He is the light of the world, but He is commissioning us to be light as well. He expects us to shine light in dark places. He expects us to shine the light of God's Word on sin and reveal it so people can recognize right and wrong. He has given us also the light of Jesus that gives hope to the world. That's the kind of salt and light He wants us to be. So we're to be salt. Now, we're not to be pillars of salt. So follow with me for a minute. In Genesis 19, you have that classic, everybody knows story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. You have Lot, who was related to Abraham, and his family. He lived down in that area. And some angels came to warn Lot, hey, God's going to bring destruction down on Sodom and Gomorrah. Get out now. And they kind of hesitated. And it says in Genesis 19, when he hesitated, the men, referring to the angels, grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and of his two daughters and led them safely out of the city. For the Lord was merciful to them. And as soon as He brought them out of the city, they said to Lot and his family, flee for your lives. Don't look back. Don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. And then, after a little bit more of the story, you get to verse 24. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. And he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, etc. So, a terrible, terrible thing. So before I get to the last part of the story, I just want to point out, we hear people nowadays try to reinterpret things to fit their views, instead of interpreting the Bible from God's view. And so some people say, no, if you look in Ezekiel, God didn't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah for sexual sin. It was for not caring for the poor, for being arrogant, for not being hospitable to people. And that is mentioned in Ezekiel 16, but it also says they were haughty and did detestable things, or abominable things, referring to the same word in the Mosaic Law, where the word abomination used for sexual immorality, especially of a homosexual nature. 2 Peter 2, Peter says about how God condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the filthy lives of the lawless men. Jude chapter 1 says the people in Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. So if you hear somebody say, no, it's just inhospitality and not caring for the poor, they're not looking at the whole Bible story for that. Now let's get back to the story, to the last verse, verse 26 of Genesis 19. As they are fleeing, they've left the city, but now they're still got to get out of this plains area because the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is on the way, and the angels have warned them. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. She looked back and became a pillar of salt. That has a lot to think about there, and we don't have a lot of details. But we know that the destruction that happened at that time, obviously there's a lot of salt there in the area. What we don't know is, why did she hesitate? We know she hesitated. Why did she hesitate? Maybe she hesitated because she's leaving a place she liked. Maybe she didn't like everything that went on there, but maybe she misses, already envisions missing her home, missing maybe the shops, maybe missing some of her friends, maybe missing just the things that were part of that life there. Maybe she hesitated because she was not trusting God. The angel said, hurry, you got to go now. The angels were operating on God's behalf to give mercy to Lot and his family. Here's the lesson for us to think about. Her hesitation cost her everything, including her very life. And we followers of Jesus must be diligent to keep ourselves from getting attached to this world. We must fight. We've all got to fight that tendency to relax and let down our guard and start to love the world and all that it offers more than what God offers, and more than God. We must have already decided in our hearts, especially nowadays, we've got to already decided in our hearts that we will not let anything prevent us from obeying the Lord without hesitation. And if we're not there yet, we've got to keep training ourselves with God's help to get to that place where we won't hesitate like Lot's wife. She hesitated, she lagged behind, she didn't hurry to flee as God's angel had warned and strongly urged them. And her slowness to obey, her captivation with what was going on, her tight connection to that city and the world she enjoyed, cost her her life. And God put that in the Word so we would have a warning to instruct us. And the website gotquestions.org, they always have some great Christian answers to questions related to the Bible. And so they have one about this topic. And the researcher says the Hebrew word for pillar, where it says she was turned into a pillar of salt, that Hebrew word refers to a garrison or a deputy. It can refer to that. It can refer to something set to watch over something else. Think of this, the image of Lot's wife standing watch over the Dead Sea area, where to this day nothing can live. And the writer said, it is a poignant reminder to us not to look back or turn back from the profession of faith we have made, but to follow Christ without hesitation and abide in His love. Well written. So be salt. Don't be a pillar of salt. Be salt influencing this world and being ready to let go whenever the Lord calls. A lady named Jo Wilmer has a Christian blog, and she said this: salt stops corruption and decay. Salt stimulates thirst. Jesus calls us salt. Are we showing his light to a dying world? Is anyone thirsty for Christ because of our words? So keep the faith. I'm going to add that to her words. Keep the faith. Trust the Lord. Pray for revival. We really need to be praying for lost souls to come to Christ. And chase after God. He won't let you down. Speak the truth in love. That's part of being salt and light. So be salt. Don't be a pillar of salt. God bless. Take care.